Hello lovely people, it's Hila here, Saturday Night Stitch, and today I'm going to show you a tutorial on how to make this wonderful face mask, which is pretty neat because there is a little trick that I'm going to show you of how you can make this so that it doesn't stick to your mouth or your face. So as you can see there, I've got the face mask and it is sticking right away from my mouth because I don't like it when the face masks do that and they interfere with my lipstick and my talking. And as you can see, I am using a fantabulous Liberty Tana Lawn scrap because I think one thing that has come out of this entire situation is that for us seamstresses, we have an opportunity to use those precious scrap fabrics that we have been hanging on to. I am using a pattern from the Burda website. The link is in the description box down below. You just print out the PDF without any scaling to it. You're going to need some elastic band or string, whatever you prefer to use, and you need scissors. Dressmaking or paper scissors will do. I personally prefer to use Wonder clips. So let's get started. Once you have your mask pattern, which comes in 4 different sizes by the way, and I'm cutting out the XL because that's the adult size and I kind of find that that fits quite well for me. So we're going to cut around it. Now this pattern already includes the seam allowances, so you don't have to add any seam allowances. You use 1 centimeter seam allowances. It has a lining piece. And the first step that you do after you've cut your pattern pieces out is to sew the curved seam. Don't forget to backstitch because you don't want your mask to come apart. So the benefit of having a mask that has a lining section that you can access like you do with this particular mask is that if you still wanted to, you could add in an extra filter or something like that. I know some people like to do that. My mother-in-law certainly prefers to do that. So once you have your lining and your main pattern piece all sewn up along that curved edge, you're just going to take your scissors and you're going to trim down the seam allowances. Now, I prefer to use pinking shears, especially when I'm working with Tana Lawn because it doesn't unravel. And I find that pinking shears work really well for this. So we're just going to cut all the way along as close to the stitch line as possible without actually cutting into the stitch line. The wonderful thing of working with Tana Lawn is that it is such a lightweight fabric that you can get away with finger pressing during some of the smaller sewing tasks. So that's what I do when I'm sewing up these face masks. And by the way, I've actually made several of these Liberty Tana Lawn face masks. In a lining pattern piece, you're going to fold those straight edges under and you're going to sew them down just for a neat finish. If you have an overlocker and you're not too fast, you could just serge those edges if you wanted to. But I find that when I'm working with Tana Lawn, I really like to keep things as neat as is possible. So yeah, you just fold those under and you are going to top stitch them down. By the way, don't worry if this doesn't seem to make sense. My way of sewing is such that I like to spend as much time as is possible on the sewing machine and then do all of my pressing in one go. Okay, so it might be advisable to watch this video through to the end before you do it again because some things seem like they don't make sense until they do. Okay, so back to the tutorial. So those are our 2 pattern pieces, right? And with the lining, the inner lining, we have folded under the straight edge and we've top stitched it. Now we're going to put our lining and our outer pattern piece, matching up that center curved seam, right sides together. It is a face mask. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter if you mess up which is the right side, but you just want to make sure that it's got the 2 pieces of fabric there. So I use my Wonder clips just to make sure that I've got the center curved seam lined up. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to sew the lining to the main pattern piece. And that's all we're going to do. Because the fabric is a little bit curved, the seam is a little bit curved at the bottom, you will need to make sure that you use your hands to manipulate the fabric through the machine. You're going to grab your scissors and we're just going to trim the bit that is underneath the lining, because we still need that seam allowance on the main piece of fabric. Once that's done, you're just going to turn it right side out, and voila, you are halfway towards having a lovely Tana Lawn mask. And here we go, we have what is beginning to look like the finished mask, and you can see how the curved seam kind of starts at a little bit of a lower point and sticks out. And then the next part is the best part of working with Tana Lawn, is you get to press it, because Tana Lawn responds so beautifully to a steam iron. So you're gonna press it down, and this is where a tailor's ham may come in handy, especially when you do that curved seam. And then once you have that, the next step is to deal with the main pattern piece, the outer pattern piece, and you're going to fold under the sides so that you can create the elastic casing. And I'm going to show you what that looks like actually just now. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that side, fold it under by just a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, press it, and then turn it under again, lining up the edge of the elastic casing with the edge of the lining, and it gives it a very nice and seamless look. So we're just going to give that another quick little press, just because it's fun to do. And once you've done that, you are going to edge stitch along the edge of that folded seam allowance to create your elastic casing. That's the other side prepped now and ready to go over to the machine. Again, it just creates a nice look and finish to it, although you could use a serger. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to do something with that seam so that it will stay away from your mouth, making it easier for you to talk. As you can see there, that is the casing that you actually create, and it's very nice. And that's where we will thread through our elastic in my case, or if you prefer whatever other tying material. So in order to keep that seam from my face, I use a 3-step zigzag, which is a really nifty stitch that I have on my machine. So I am going to line up my presser foot and my sewing needle with that center seam. And as you can see, it's doing the 3-step zigzag. And I think most machines will have a 3-step zigzag. If not, you can just use a wide zigzag, or you could do 3 lines of a zigzag stitch. It will still create the same effect. And what it does is it makes that seam just a little bit stiffer, enough for it to hold itself up. And it is very comfortable, especially when you pair it with the lovely crispness of a Tana Lawn. I've just done a fixing stitch on there, which will just make sure that it doesn't unravel or come apart. And that is the main part of this lovely little mask done. I can give it another press on there just to make it look, you know how when you stitch on something and you actually give it a press, it just looks so much nicer. And there it is. It's given that curved seam more strength and more structure, and when you're wearing it, it does keep it away from your face, allowing you to wear it for longer periods of time. I'm a very simple person. I would just use a safety pin and my knicker elastic, which I am just going to thread through. There's 2 ways that you could do your elastic. Number one, you could just tie it if you want to. So you'd probably want to check what's comfortable tension for you by trying on the mask with some elastic threaded through, because I know some people like their masks to be much tighter and some people don't like them to be as tight. So I personally prefer to tie, so I just tie a knot just like that. And this is because I have to wash my masks in the washing machine, And so elastic eventually loses its elasticity, especially when you're doing high washes. So I know I'll need to replace the elastic, so it's just a lot easier if I have it tied and I can just replace it. And there we go. As you can see, the mask keeps nicely away from my mouth so that I am able to speak freely, and it's a beautiful mask. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this useful, and if you did, do give it a big thumbs up in the box down below. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe, and until I see you next time, guys, happy sewing. Bye.